We made it. Here we are. Right now, we are broadcasting live on the new Facebook page for
Mhm.
the Story Studio Network. So Aaron and I will be here. The whole idea is, I don't know how you talk me into this, but to sit down and do a daily show. We're going to do a daily show, but only 10 minutes, give or take. And the
Yeah.
whole idea here is to explore some of the stuff that you and I've been talking about for the last month or so. And quite frankly, I just floated an idea by you that I thought was a cool content idea. And you took it and just blew it up and exploded it. And now it's become its own thing. And I'm not sure I can keep up.
Yes, I do. I have a habit of I love to start things, but I also love to think big. So when you come to me with an idea and I see the seed and I'm able to grow it, I just go for it. That's how I operate.
This is like the Jack's beans. All of a sudden, it went from here to whoa, this huge beanstalk, and now we've got this giant of a project. But it's exciting because you and I talked about it on my radio show last weekend. And the first thing that we're going to do is a new podcast called The Next Normal. And it
Mhm.
really is reviving what I was doing a year ago. And what we were spending a lot of time looking at were the lessons that we thought we had to learn from COVID-19. And here we are a year later. We are now beginning to reopen.
Mhm.
Various parts of the country are going to be in various stages of reopening. So by July, we're really going to be stepping back out into the real world and looking at how we are going to live in the COVID era. And I don't quite think it's going to be as simple as most people think it is.
I really don't think it's as simple as most people think it's going to be. It's not just a matter of reopening the stores, everybody back to business. And we're seeing lots of conversations, especially on LinkedIn. I'm seeing heated emotional debates about whether workplaces need to insist that workers come back into the office or
Hmm.
whether remote working is going to become more the norm. But the other thing, just to bring it back to really explaining to folks what Story Studio Network is that I see this new era that we're entering into as not only a new way of doing business, but a new way of consuming information and a new way of elevating conversations. I think what came out of the last year, at least for me as a digital business owner, is that we can get really myopic really quickly. And we've seen this with all of the kind of conversations around Black Lives Matter, around Indigenous rights, around all of these big conversations that happened during COVID. And I don't think that was a coincidence. COVID allowed us to open our minds to talking differently. And as somebody who, frankly, was basically born in a newsroom, I have felt in the core of my body for the longest time that this needed to happen in the media landscape. The media needs to respond to people's desire and need to consume and engage with information differently. And podcasting started, and I was a podcasting pioneer. I had to go to the dean at the Faculty of Information and Media Studies at University of Western Ontario and request special permission to start a podcast for the university in 2006. I saw this coming, but we're now at the second evolution of podcasting where we no longer just want to have a podcast and speak into a void. We don't want to preach to the choir. We want to bring people in.
Yeah, you want to bring people into the choir is what you want to do,
You want to
right?
bring
Yeah,
people in. You
yeah.
want to create interaction. You don't just want to have a podcast, and maybe you do if it's I'm not saying there's anything wrong with starting a podcast as you just a solo person, but COVID taught us that there's new ways to connect and there's new ways to use and leverage new media to do that. So that's really for me what this network is.
It when you put it that way, it's also it's not just about communicating it, it's about looking at what you value through the values of others. And that to me, I think is where this whole next normal kind of sprouted all of these ideas because we're going to talk about the cultural values that we have, policy values that we have. To your point around the Indigenous and First Nations discussion that is raging right now because 215
Mhm,
remains of 215 children are found buried at a school in British Columbia. And I don't know
mhm.
about you, but I've had I don't know how many conversations in the last 3 days with folks who are pretty plugged in. They're
Mhm.
paying attention. We knew that there was a problem with First Nations in this country with First Nations for a while. But to that degree, the level of abuse, the level of indignity that they were these children were subjected to, I'm not sure we would have had this same conversation 2 years ago as we're about to have now. So this is the stuff that's going to churn through this particular show. But to your point, there are all kinds of opportunities here
Mhm.
to grow this into a much larger network of these various conversations. And so I think you're right. There will always be the person who wants to have their own solo show to talk about cars. And that's cool. You're always going to have an audience for that. But our intention is here, as I said, is to add very variations in the points of view and the degree to which, for example, in the next normal, we are going to have brains involved here who do not share expertise in terms of their backgrounds. They overlap. And the idea then is going to be to pull the thread of the conversation through these lenses. And at the end of it, saying, okay, now what's possible? What is it that
Mhm.
we can do? What
Mhm.
lesson did we learn? And what action can we? And you're right. Media, for whatever reason, I'm going to just say it's laziness in many respects, just doesn't have the capacity to do this anymore. It does not have the ability to do it. So here we are. And I'm excited about it. And anybody I talk to about it gets, wow, that's a cool idea. So I think you're onto something.
Yeah, I think for too long in my generation, the media has been progressively more and more vilified, rightly so, in many for many reasons, and more lazy because we've seen corporations take over. I call them the ivory tower bean counters take over. And frankly, as an act of what is it that I can do in the world that is within my best interest, using my best gifts to pursue these conversations to make society better, is to finally break that mold and change the conversation. So we want to stand up shows about climate change. We want to stand up shows about women in business. What does that mean to be a women in business? We want to stand up shows about the new norm of parenting. Everything is different, and there's an opportunity to have these really deep conversations about so many things that can actually create positive change. So, this is just the beginning. We're going to be doing this every day. So, lots of opportunity to connect with us and ask us questions. If you want to host a show, you want to talk about how this could look for you in your business or for your company, please get in touch and just continue to share and engage, and we can promise that we'll show up as best we can 5 days a week and see what happens.
And when necessary, Banjo shows up on cue.
Banjo shows up on cue with the UPS man, and sometimes I will probably have a mom bun and a hot cup of coffee because that's just legit how my life is. But
Well,
um,
and by the way, this is not product placement. I'm celebrating my 100th ride, and they
oh,
sent me a T-shirt.
maybe we'll
What
stand
is
up and
that?
show about the new kind of wellness.
For sure.
I would love to talk about wellness because I just ordered a speed bag for my office because I like to punch things out instead of ride it out.
All right. We'll keep our distance. You know what? We're almost there. There's 10 minutes. That's the
Yeah.
first show in the bag. So we'll talk to you tomorrow.